Today, I'm starting by making a very firm but a very simple declaration to each and every one of you. No matter who you are, God can and wants to use you in far greater ways than you could ever imagine. Hello, my name is Ian, and this is today's 5 minute soundbite. Now, in the Old Testament, we find a prophet named Amos. Now, Amos, in a lot of ways, he was no one. He was a farmer. He was a shepherd. He was probably in the back end of nowhere. But God made him to be a prophet to the nation. God caused him to speak boldly to the priests of that time. Now, the priests, they didn't want to hear the message that Amos was bringing, but it was God's word for them at that time. Now, they rebuked him and they sent him away. But he, in turn, rebuked them with the word that God gave him for those prophets, for those priests. And it delivered God's judgment on them. He was what we would term a nobody, but God made him to be somebody for that time, for that place, for God's purpose. Now, Amos, he knew his God. He knew his calling. He knew who he was, and he walked in it. Let's move on a little bit to 1 Samuel 16, which shows us David. Now, David, before he had been discovered, he was used within the family to tend his father's sheep. He was, as you might say, probably the runt of the litter. He was given the small jobs, the menial jobs. Go and look after the sheep, David. Now, Jesse had 7 sons. And when the prophet Samuel was sent to find the king that God wanted, Jesse had his 7 prime sons pass in front of Samuel. But each one, Samuel knew that that wasn't God's chosen one. And he had to ask, are there any others? So they brought David before Samuel. And as soon as Samuel saw David, he knew this was God's anointed one. And he anointed David for the future role as king, a mighty king. He was in a lowly place, and no one would ever have thought that God would have used him for that purpose. But God knew who it was to be, where the line would be set for the future coming of Jesus and that royal line, that royal line. So though the world will disregard different people because it doesn't see them as being anything significant, God doesn't just see your potential. He knows what you have been created for. Our part is to say, Lord, how, when, where do you want me to be? We need to just simply come before the Lord and surrender. Discouragement and adversity will probably come to us, but keep your eyes on him alone. Stay locked into him and he will guide you through. Let me give you a very quick but practical scenario. When airplanes fly in bad weather, how do they safely reach their destination? They are given a reference point to lock into, and that sends out a signal. That signal brings them to the destination where they should be. God is our reference point. When we look to him, surrender our will to his glorious way, we will be completely on track. Have a great day and join us again next week.